Welcome to Head Office, where we talk all things brains and business. I'm your host, Jackie Elsom, and thank you for listening today. Before we dive into the topic, I hope it's okay if I share with you that we are only a week away from the book release mission party. I am so excited. I had no idea how much it would take to pull something like this off, but it is pure delight to be able to see my heart's desires coming to life. I have always said that my business model was telling people that they didn't have to be subject to their brains. And now I am after 100,000 business owners, and I can't think of anything better to go after. Now, let's dive into today's topic. Have you ever bought a new car or even started thinking about buying one, and suddenly you see that car everywhere? The same make, same model, even the same color. And you think, where did all these cars come from? They didn't suddenly show up. They were there all along. What changed is you noticed them. And there's a part of your brain that helps explain why this happens. It's called the Reticular Activating System, RAS for short. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to turn this into a neuroscience class. I want to talk about is what this means to you as a business owner. Because your brain is taking in enormous amounts of information all day long, you can't consciously pay attention to all of it. Last week, we talked about missed opportunity. This is kind of the second part of that. So your brain has a filter. It has to decide what matters, what should be noticed, and what can I ignore? And your RAS is involved in the attention and filtering system. I like to say sometimes it's like your brain's GPS system. If you program it, it will take you where you want to go. Your RAS is involved in what you notice and what is happening. What you repeatedly tell your brain is important can influence what you notice. Think about what that means in your business. If you're walking around thinking, business is really slow, you're probably going to notice things that give you evidence that the business is slow. Someone doesn't call you back. A prospect says no. Your inbox is very quiet. A client leaves. And then your brain says, see, I told you, business is slow. But there's a problem. While you're busy noticing all the evidence that business is slow, what are you not noticing? The person who asked you questions that turned into the client? What about a past customer you haven't contacted for 6 months? Or maybe you got an invitation to an event, the opportunity to follow up with someone. What about the person who likes all your LinkedIn posts? Or the idea that last Tuesday you had an opportunity and dismissed it. Those things have been there all along, but your attention was somewhere else. And this is where I think understanding your brain becomes extremely powerful. Because so often we believe we're simply seeing reality. We are not. We are seeing part of a reality. I can't remember right now, but there's a quote that says, I can't remember who said it, but there's a quote that says, we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. We're seeing things through a filter. Let me give you another explanation. Suppose you keep thinking nobody is spending money right now. That sounds like fact, doesn't it? Especially if you've had a few people tell you no. I had this thought a couple of years ago, right before the elections, when uncertainty was in the air and everyone was concerned about the economy. Maybe I was assuming that people just weren't able to get past the uncertainty that was in the air. And I kept thinking, nobody is spending money. But I realized that my reticular activating system was looking for things to prove that to me. And my clients weren't coming in through the leads that was drying up. So I knew I needed to set my RAS, reticular activating system, to a different filter. So I went out and I said, let's look for where people are spending money. Well, people were spending money on other things besides just gas and groceries. I saw them going to the movies, eating dinner out. I saw them buying new clothes. And I happened to notice that there was a truck pulling a brand new boat down the road. Now, I realized then that people were spending money. And how did that change how I saw things? Well, instead of kind of shrinking back and not really carrying on conversations with people, I began to be more confident in what I had to offer. And I began to understand that people were spending money on what they thought was valuable. So I went back and I figured out how what I offered them could be more valuable. Maybe you assume that people aren't interested in what you have to offer, or you haven't really thought about what type of value you bring to the table. So you're thinking, see, no one's spending money. But is that reality? Or does your brain start to look for evidence to support what you really believe? This is why I say all the time, your thoughts are not facts. Your brain creates interpretations. And those interpretations often find evidence that will support that. That's useful when the thinking is helping you, but it is incredibly limiting when those thoughts aren't supporting you. Imagine instead of thinking no one is spending money, your RAS is looking for who needs my help? What problems can I solve? You start holding conversations that turn into leads. You find people to connect with. You find opportunities that may be useful. Same situation as before, but now you have a different filter. That's why the questions you ask yourself matter so much. Instead of, why isn't anybody buying? Try this. Why? What am I not seeing yet? Instead of, why can't I get clients? Where are opportunities for me to create conversations? Instead of, why isn't this working? Try, what is working that I could do more? Or maybe don't say, I don't know what to do. Try, what's the next useful action I can take? Do you see the difference in those two questions? I'm not asking you to stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself you're a millionaire. I could do that all day long, and my brain's going to come back to me. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. But I'm not talking about pretending. What I'm talking about is definitely more than saying positive thoughts and customers will magically appear. That's not how it works. I'm talking about directing your attention because your brain is already filtering information. The question is, what have you trained it to look for? Maybe problems, danger. What about rejection? Reasons something doesn't work. Evidence that you're behind, or evidence that everyone else has it figured out. Or are you training your brain to notice positive solutions? conversations, resources, and actions that you can actually take. Here's something I want you to try this week. Pick one thing you want to move forward in your business. Just one. Maybe a new client, or maybe you have a decision to make. Could it be create more revenue? Or do you want an opportunity to speak? Maybe there's a problem you haven't figured out. Now, instead of saying, I need more clients, give your brain a better question. Where are conversations that could lead to my next client? Then go through your week looking for them. Who comments on your posts? Who asks you what to do? Who tells you about a problem that they're having? Who have you been meaning to follow up with? Who introduces you to someone? What invitations have come across your desk? What ideas keep popping into your head? Pay attention, because you might discover something fantastic. The opportunity wasn't necessarily missing it. You just weren't noticing it. And this is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about helping business owners with their brains. Because when you don't understand what's happening up there, it's easy to believe the thoughts your brains hand you. My business isn't working. I'm not good at sales. People don't want me to sell. I waited too long. The market is terrible. I can't do this. The list goes on and on and on. And once you believe the thought, your brain can get really, really good at showing you all the reasons that that's true. So maybe the goal isn't to fight your brain. Maybe the goal is to become more intentional about the way you're asking it to look for things. This week, pay attention to your attention. Catch yourself when you're collecting evidence that something you don't actually want is what you're seeing. Then ask yourself, what else could be true? And then my favorite question, what am I not seeing? Because sometimes the gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't a lack of opportunity. That's what we talked about last week. It's a lack of noticing the opportunity when it's there. That's your head office for today. I'll see you next Monday. And until then, mind your business, mind your brain.